Welcome to the Porsche Club Insider, your one stop for all things Porsche and PCA. Here's your host, Vu Gwyn, and the Insider crew.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 22. For the first time here at our podcast studio at HQ, we have a guest. So I'm going to first introduce our guest, Robin Wilkes with Pirelli, Vice President of Sales. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you very much.
And I apologize for any anything that we might talk about today that might not be appropriate. I mean, I never know where this conversation goes, so I'm just going to apologize in advance, but we're happy to have you here as a guest. I apologize because I have to my right here our technical director, Manny Damon, and to my left, digital media coordinator, Damon Lowney. How's everyone doing?
Good. Before we started recording, we were talking about different types of Pirellis and the differences, and I think we can agree that no, you can't blame Pirelli on the driver. I mean, it's the mediocre driver. The tires aren't going to make you a awesome.
So where this is, they just right out of the gate, they just jump on me. So we're talking about the Trofeo R's that I have on my 996, and as you know, I'm always gunning and duking it out here with Damon at the autocross. And at Parade, it was a cold, rainy day, and I was on my Trofeo R's, and I had all sorts of other excuses to share with you, and I fell way short behind him at about 4 seconds on the run. Fast forward to a autocross that we had here locally, I came out and I was about 0.3 of a second behind him.
Max Verstappen on this side, Nicholas Latifi on this side.
So the point is that the Trofeo R's do require some heat. They are a track day tire more so than an autocross tire. So at operating temperature, Robin ensures that if I had to, at operating temperature, at least 2 seconds.
So you got to get some tire warmers.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, more only come out on hot days.
4 guys to stand there and rip them off, and then you'll be all set.
That would look pretty intimidating.
It would be cheaper to pay Damon $500
to let up,
not to beat you.
Just to let up. Just let up at the gate. So, anyways, what have we done since last time we were together? We got to see Top Gun together. That was kind of cool. That was a Porsche PCA field trip.
I'm going to come out and say that I preferred Maverick more than the original Top Gun.
I'm going to say I was impressed with any sequel is kind of tough, but they did an amazing job because they didn't go too corny on the old references. But if you go back to when the first Top Gun was created,
84, I think it was.
Yeah, like what they were able to do then was unheard of. So I think with that in mind, I still say the original is better because all the theatrics that you see in the current one, in the digital age, I'm not saying it's easier, but it's probably not. It wasn't as big of a hurdle as it was making the original one.
I didn't pick up on it. And Boo pointed it out that they didn't identify a enemy. Because the first one was Russians, we knew that.
Yeah.
But this one, I didn't realize they didn't really identify who the enemy was.
Yeah, they did a great job. Robin, did you see it?
So I haven't seen it yet. I'm a huge fan of the original one.
Yeah.
So I have very high expectations.
It's a respectful sequel.
Okay, so that's good.
Yeah, no, you'll enjoy it. I mean,
but
I
think
was concerned.
I think as you said, the first one was so groundbreaking in terms of what they were able to do, and from what I understood about the new one, like it's not all visual effects. You go to see most new movies and you can see immediately that the whole thing is completely animated.
Yeah.
Whereas they were really filming in a lot of jets, and I think that's probably what gives it that credibility.
The authenticity.
I'm pretty sure Tom Cruise knows how to fly in F-18.
I think that plane...
They did not let him... I read that the Navy did not let him fly.
But the plane that was in the second movie was his plane, like the older vintage plane.
B-51?
Yeah, I think that's his plane.
Yeah, that's fine, but the Navy said that it was the taxpayers' equipment, and he was not going to be flying them.
Yeah.
So since our last podcast, if you're watching us on YouTube Live, you see these like pancake... I don't even know what we call these things.
Pop filters.
Pop filters, because we did see some comments. A few episodes ago, I had some issues with popping noises, and then I think the most recent one, Manny did. So we're continuing to dial in the audio. So hopefully this is better, and continue to let us know if we're doing a good job. My voice is hopefully not cracking. My hearing, I think, is okay. But last night we had a non-Porsche event, but it was very interesting, and I'll let Manny share this.
Yes, it was a bucket list band I wanted to see, Rage Against the Machine, who have been broken up for a while, and I always said if they got back together, I would love to see them. And in 2019, they announced they were going having a reunion tour, so I got tickets for Vu and I, and then COVID hit. It was canceled twice, and I totally forgot about it until I got an email from Ticketmaster saying, "Get ready for your concert experience." And I opened it up, and I'm like, "Oh my God, it's in 2 weeks." So luckily, we were in town and available, and so we.
So Manny's a diehard fan of Rage, and I will say I am the polar opposite.
I am a diehard fan as well, but
Are you really?
I didn't. Yeah, I have all their albums, and I wanted to
Really?
see them way back in 06, 07. Then they broke up after playing at Coachella.
Oh,
But-
so I knew one song, and many of the songs, and for the fans, don't hate me, but they all sounded fairly similar. So I wasn't sure. I was like, is this a song that I know? But they saved the song that I knew to the very end, because it's like their most famous song. But it was, I went there to people watch, and I'm also, like, I love audio. So going to a concert, and man, they just had the audio dialed in, like the vocals, and we were at the Capital One Arena, and the bass that hits. I mean, this was the only way I could describe it was if Red Bull was music, they would be Rage Against the Machine. I mean, the energy was amazing. Thankfully, we were up high. We didn't spin on the floor.
Mosh pit.
The mosh pit, because I've never seen a mosh pit.
As you called it, the
Really?
middle-aged mosh
But this
pit.
was a middle-aged mosh pit, because I'm watching them. I'm like, this has got to turn into a fight at some point, because they're just slamming bodies into each other, and I'm going, oh my gosh! But then when the song ends, everybody was hugging, and I was like, that's so weird. Like you were moments ago just running into everybody. But anyways, Rage Against the Machine, that was pretty cool.
So we're working about 4 hours of sleep.
Yeah. So if our voices are funny and I don't hear anything. Let's see, what else did we do? I was at Porsche of Silver Spring for their unveiling of their classic preservation, not restoration, their 968.
I thought it was a restoration.
Nope.
They rebuilt the engine, and
I don't know that they rebuilt the engine. So,
they took it apart because they had pictures in their Instagram.
but I think it was preservation, because like the paint was not perfect. It had original paint. It's an original car. I know you're looking at the smoke, and I think that was just the bug that went
Yes,
into the
that was
lights.
the
Sorry.
Bug got zapped.
Hornet or something that.
Honestly, I'm happy that it's there, because it's not going to sting us now.
Yes,
It's burning
nice.
up. It's going.
At that perfect temperature. better take it off the grill before it gets
All right,
well done.
Stay focused. Stay focused. Anyways, it was a white 968 Tiptronic, beautiful interior, Chesapeake region member owned, I believe, and I think dealers across the country unveiled. I think in Florida there was a 964 that was unveiled. I think Chicago was unveiling their car.
Didn't you mention that at Works Reunion we're going to have a bunch of these restoration cars from the dealerships?
Yeah, so I don't know how, like, what classes they're going to be judged, but I know at Sports Car Together Fest there's going to be
Yeah, it's the top.
the top winners
are
are going to be
invited
there.
to, yeah.
But at Works Reunion, we are going to have 22 of these cars.
That's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, so
That's
we'll get to see what these dealers are doing, and some dealers are going full on, like, full restoration. Some, like Porsche of Silver Spring, is doing preservation and trying to maintain the patina and
So
originality.
preservation is just what? It's just sort of updating all of the maintenance, making sure that it's working as it should be without going back and
I think the panels, like 80% of the panels have to be original, or
There's preservation PCA.
yeah.
But then preservation, whatever their interpretation.
Yeah, but if you go by
varies.
PCAs, like X amount of body panels,
Like
and paint has to
75%
be-
the paint has to be original. and
Yeah. So pretty interesting. I think, well, I probably shouldn't share their strategy, so maybe I'll skip on that. But later on, they asked for something that I have to be presented together with the car when they do it, so it should be kind of cool.
An 80s thing?
Yeah.
That's their strategy.
No, no. Let's move on to your tech session.
From your hoarding garage, you're going to pull something from the 80s.
All right. See, this is not Pile on Boo Day. How about the tech session that you went to, Manny?
It was interesting because it was a tuner. It's a shop that tunes cars, and I was not surprised because I've been to one of his tech sessions before. But he basically told people not to believe everything they read from these aftermarket claims of horsepower, and that Porsche has done a phenomenal job, especially from the cat back on exhaust. He said pretty much you're not going to, in his opinion, you're not going to get any gains. You'll get sound difference, but you're not going to get any, at least any decent horsepower gains from your exhaust. And unless you have a turbo, don't expect a whole lot from aftermarket software.
No.
So it was interesting how he
Well, I think there's...
wasn't trying to sell you on something that was false.
Yeah.
He was,
And I love it how there's some people, when they first get the car, they start spending all sorts of money, and they claim that this thing they put on the car was 5 horsepower. This was another 5. Here's another.
They added up.
And then they added up. They're like, I think I've got like 100 horsepower over stock, and it's like, it doesn't work that way. Now there are some great aftermarket, exhausts and intakes and stuff like that do add either drivability, or it moves the power band,
Or reduces weight.
Weight.
Things, yeah.
But choose those items carefully, and talk with people that have them. Talk with shops maybe that have installed them, because you can't just simply add it all up. It can add enjoyment to the car for sure. Like I know a lot of times an exhaust system in the Porsche world, because the engines have been kind of tuned so efficiently, and if you're keeping the stock catalytic converter, you're doing things after it, the audio is where it's going to be the most satisfaction you're going to get out of the exhaust. But as far as power,
I thought you were going to the stereo system.
well, that
What a
too.
leap that was.
That is too. Well, that's for another conversation. Damon has been continuing to practice his skill to make sure that he's ahead of me at autocross.
I try.
So, while I was at Porsche of Silver Spring, you were at Summit Point, I believe.
Summit Point Raceway, Potomac region had an autocross, but it was actually the Porsche Fest. So if you are native to the Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, you might have heard of it. It's a big event. They have an HPDE session and a big showcase of what the region does. What you're watching now is my run, my best run that day, which I think I did pretty well. I screwed it up at the end, as you'll see. Finishing strong on the power, as straight as possible, and not pinching the turnoff is very important, and I didn't follow that. But had a lot of fun, and as we were doing this, the rest of the region was out on the track doing an HPDE, and we had some people coming over to check out the autocross, kids, families, so they got a good taste of how it all was.
But this is all one run that we were just seeing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
about 60 seconds.
That was the longest autocross run I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was pretty
Really?
long.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty
He was
good.
going kind of slow. If you got it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Michael
because
Tavener
because
would be a
of the
little
tires,
quicker.
probably.
Yeah, he was. I was. I think we haven't gotten the results back. They had to do the timing by hand because the computers, with all the rain, some of the equipment was damaged. And
Yeah.
So-
that's tough.
They had the iPhones out.
But at least they still
Yeah,
got
right.
to record the
Yeah.
times. Though, like they
Yeah.
clicked it off digitally. They just
they just had to write it down. Now they have
Yeah.
to sort through it. I think I'm probably top 10, which is what I've been going for.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah, so Robin, we strive to have autocrosses at least a minute, because anything less than that goes by so quick.
Yeah, a lot of them are 40 something, maybe 50 something, but this
Yeah.
was 61 or so seconds for me, so it was a pretty long one.
Yeah.
So,
Because there's a lot of turns there to remember. Like it's a long course.
So we're about midway through the season now, and the way Jeff, one of the autocross organizers, described it was the beginning autocrosses. It's more simple to figure out the track, or so they say. Just depends on how you read the track and how well you can remember it. I didn't have any really issues on this one, but this one was actually more turns. It was tighter, and they threw a couple loops for you where the line looked one way, but counterintuitively you might take it a little bit wide here, and tighten it up in another area. So yeah, more turns, tighter, more challenging that's what that was supposed to be.
Yeah, they do a great job, and I miss running out there. That what course is that?
So that's Washington Circuit. Some points,
go-kart.
Yeah, the old go-kart track. Yeah. So,
but the highlight last week was for Damon and I, because you weren't in town, was driving the.
But I arranged it.
You did. Thank you.
Didn't he
Thank
say
you for arranging a car
he
for
wanted
us?
Manny to drive this car?
Yes, but I arranged it under the direction of the executive director. So they got to drive a
92 Porsche was going to have a Carrera Cup Series in the U.S. Kind of like they have now with the 992s. Because of the economy and Porsche wasn't doing too well as a company financially, once the cars get here, Porsche decides to cancel the series. And these were essentially a real RS, not RS Americas, but real European RSs. And Porsche had learned from the 959 a better understanding how to import cars into the U.S. and not have them stuck somewhere like the 959s where they couldn't get out of impound. So they bring over these cars that are really race cars hidden underneath some carpeting, and the carpeting wasn't even glued down, and they didn't put any insulation on the cars. It was a race car, so they just leave the carpet there so the inspectors can look in, they see a carpet, they see airbags, and they can just let it through versus seeing bare metal. But once it got to a company called Andal, they would just start tearing the carpet out, and it was just laying there, so it was very easy to take off. And so Andal would put the roll cage in there and some more safety items, so it would pass for a race car. So they had converted 27 maybe, into race cars. Porsche canceled the series. So that's where it becomes the urban legend of how many cars actually were converted back to street cars. And Porsche said just sell them all, and they didn't want to ship them back to Germany, so they sold them here. It's a car that not many people really understand what it is, because it looks like a street car inside. It looks like a regular 964 Carrera 2, except no air conditioning, no sunroof, no back seat, little things that had like a cutoff switch where race cars had, and of course the engine. So the engine was an RS engine, and it was less than 20 horsepower difference between that and the regular street car. But it felt a lot more than 20 horsepower. So Carmelo drove it down from New Jersey. He said he was bringing it down. In my head, I'm thinking a trailer. And I hear this engine. I said, oh, he must be out front unloading it. No, he drove the race car down.
Not only did he get new tires, because when he reached out to me initially, he said he was going to trailer it or he was going to come down. He's like, well, before they drive it, I want to make sure it has good tires. So did he mount up new tires?
Yeah, there are new tires now, yeah.
Yeah, so he put new tires on, and he drove it down for you guys.
And he drove it down because he was going to leave it here and take an Uber back.
Yeah.
And I said, no. I said, you don't have to do that. I said, the weather's great. I said, we can just come with us and we'll do the recording. You can drive it home. You don't have to pay $300 for it.
So without giving away your 1 mile review in totality, just roughly how different was it compared to the other 964 you've driven?
It was very different. This car felt identically to my race car.
Really?
Yes.
And the reason why, though, is there's an aftermarket exhaust, dual exhaust that the previous owner put on. It also has Moton suspension, which is not stock. So it wasn't just the Carrera Cup USA. It had been modified at some point in its life. Which
Did it have power steering or no?
No power steering.
No power
No
steering.
air conditioning, no radio.
More like the Ruby Stone RS you drove?
Well, it's like it had power windows. It was like a between the touring model and the lightweight. It had the aluminum hood on the front. Still had the bumper bars. So the RS I didn't think had bumper bars.
You mean the door bars?
No, the rear. So underneath the polyurethane bumper, there's a bumper bar.
Oh,
on the
okay,
bumper
I
bar.
gotcha.
And I believe the race cars had them taken off, but because his wasn't converted to a race car, it was actually what they call a port car. It was a backup car that they brought in, figuring that people are going to wreck these cars, especially for the spec series. They're banging into each other, and so if a team wanted to buy a replacement car, they would have one. And but they never got to that point because the series was canceled. So it was a great driving car.
I'll say since I didn't do that review, I'll just say a couple things. It had a numeric shifter, and if you know about short shifters, for me, sometimes they can be a little bit too short and a little bit too much effort, which I was hoping this wouldn't be. And Carmelo allowed me to drive it on the way back to the office, and I can say that this is the best shifting 964 I've driven, and
So does
the
the
loudest and the funnest.
Does a numeric shifter also raise it kind of like a rally level?
I don't think it raised it, and it wasn't too tight. Like maybe pulling away and going first to second at part throttle. Not super easy, but as soon as you give it full throttle, the 1-2 shift or the 2-3 it's the most positive shifting action I've ever had in a 964.
So yeah, I like the stock.
Yeah.
Or the RS, the nice. It felt not too different than my regular street version, but I think Damon needs to drive a 915.
I've driven a 915. It's been a while. I've driven
You've driven a 901.
I've driven a bad 915, which was very tough to get the shifts right. And then I've driven Rob's old 75 914. That had a 901, right?
901, yeah.
That's the worst shifter I've ever
See
experienced
that?
in any car.
See,
It
that's
was horrible.
my 901 or my 914 shifts very well.
Yeah. So,
So,
maybe he had some bushings
Yeah,
loose or
that's
something.
the top. Anyways, it was Damon and I had a blast driving it, and Carmelo was very generous with his time and letting us go back and forth and doing lead follow videos. And
That's awesome. Thank
props
you,
to-
Carmelo.
Yeah, props to somebody who actually drives cars like that. It's
yeah,
very
it was.
Well, speaking of people that drive their cars, last time Rob and I were together, we were at the dinner table talking about taking
In Miami, yeah.
in Miami at the F1 race, and we were beat because it was amazing but tiring all the same. And of course, what do we do at dinner? We talk about cars. And for those of you that are listening, if you're wondering whether or not he's a Porsche enthusiast, I'll let Robin share what's a few of the cars in your garage that our listeners might be interested in.
Sure, yeah. So at the moment, I have two Porsches. So basically, I daily drive a Macan S, which I enjoy very much. To me, it is sort of it's kind of like the Goldilocks car. It is just the right. It doesn't do anything outrageously good, but it is just the right amount of everything: practicality, size, visibility, everything you would want. But then earlier this year, I picked up a 981 GT4, which I had actually had a 991 Carrera before that. But I really wanted. I really liked the mid-engine platform, and I really liked just the design, just the look of it. For my personal preference, I actually prefer the 981 versus the 718. Just visually, I think it just looks a little bit, I don't know, something about it. So I have a Carmine Red GT4
Nice.
2016 with the red brake calipers and the bucket seats and everything like
Wow,
that.
Nice.
For me, it feels very special. It's never the right car to take unless I'm going to the track, but for everything else, it's never the right car. But when I get in, it just feels special. The bucket seats hug you in nice and tight. Suspension is stiff. It's loud. It's not trying to pretend like it's anything that it's not. And I really appreciate having something that is designed for one purpose, which is to drive on the track. It does that very well, and it's not trying to do anything else. And there's something really freeing about that. It feels like it's not compromised in any way.
So typical of us and at PCA, we go straight into his cars, but I think he's here for a professional reason, because he's going to be on Tech Tactics Live with us later this evening. So before we go more into the car, we probably should say you're Vice President of Sales at Pirelli,
Yes.
and you're out of Michigan, I believe.
Yes. Yep. So we have an office in Detroit. I actually live on the west side of Michigan in Grand Rapids. But that's where we have our OE office. So we have all of the people that service all the OE customers here in North America. And I'm head of the OE business unit there. So I am also fortunate enough that I do some work also on the aftermarket side or on the replacement side as well. But my day job, let's say, is the head of our OE business here in North America.
Very cool. So maybe we can just share some of the highlights that Manny, what we'll talk about tonight on Tech Tactics Live. So people, after listening to this, if they haven't seen the YouTube of Tech Tactics Live, they can go to that. What are we going to touch upon tonight?
We're going to start off with it's 150 years of Pirelli anniversary as a company. They didn't start building tires 150 years ago. They were into, I think it was the electrical insulation or something along those lines. Then came wagon tires and bicycle tires and then automotive tires. So basically from the beginning of when tires were needed for cars, I found out Pirelli's been there. And, it's very interesting how obviously they're a huge company.
Yeah.
And the testing grounds they have around the country in Brazil, it sounds like the perfect place to test Formula One tires. It's and they get the rubber evidently also from Brazil. It's have you been to that facility?
I have not been myself. As you said, there is a very large, very new proving ground that we built in Brazil recently. Also, where we've started doing some stuff that people may not know us so well for. We do some off-road testing there, truck tire testing. So, there is the element of Formula One and high performance and all this kind of stuff. But in that facility specifically, we do off-road testing as well, which is different, let's say.
Yeah.
So I have a question maybe you can answer since we're on. So the subject of Pirelli tires, we had a Cayenne Turbo GT not too long ago. It has Pirelli Corsas. And then Vu's car, and some other cars we've ran at Road America have had Trofeo Rs. They're both 80 treadwear. They're obviously both high-performance tires. How does somebody choose which one should go on their car, on their Porsche?
You're asking for a friend, right?
I'm asking for a friend, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
He's wondering if he puts Corsos on his, will he be faster than me? That's what it boils down to.
Which tire should he recommend the Vu to get?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I would say generally and historically, the Corsa has always been more of a preferred OE tire in terms of the fact that we tune it specifically for that application. I think the Turbo GT has the Corsas, is what you're referring to. And this tire, I would say, is slightly more street friendly, although to be clear, it's still a track tire. It is still a track tire. And then I would say the Trofeo is almost more like a race tire in the sense that the Turbo GT is often tuned and we make it such that we want to deliver the absolute maximum lap time possible. And then the Trofeo R, there are some OE applications, but it's fairly rare. This is more the kind of thing that somebody would mount if they want to go to a track day and they blast around all day long for a number of different track days in a row.
Gotcha.
That product, I would say, takes a little more effort to get into the right range. And as we were talking about earlier, from an autocross standpoint, where you're doing a run and then you're taking a break and then you're doing a run, there you're going to struggle to really heat cycle those tires properly, where the Corsa will be a little bit easier to do so, have a wider working range of temperatures, and will also, I would say, do a bit better in the wet.
Gotcha.
But to come back to your previous question in terms of the treadwear rating itself, I mean, both are track tires, both are designed to deliver absolute performance in slightly different working conditions. But from our perspective, when you compare that to a normal summer tire or an all-season tire or something like that, they're still not going to compare. So we rate them at 80 for both because we want to make it clear that this is a very specific product, very specific use case, and you should not expect it to be anything other than maximum performance for a relatively short period of time.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So speaking of OE and your background in OE, are the tires that, let's say, Ford, Porsche, whatever, OE puts on, and then, I don't know, 30,000 miles later you go to buy it at a dealer, the tires there, are they exactly the same as what was put on? It might be the same name, it might be the right size, but are they exactly the same? Because I've heard that possibly they might not be.
Yeah, so and I think this is something that we'll definitely talk about tonight as well, and that specifically looking at Porsche and the fact that the tires are generally marked. This is your way of getting, if you're buying a tire, buying a replacement tire, if it has the N marking, and there are different ones now too, and it's become more and more complex, N0, N1, N2, different iterations, but ultimately this assures you that it is the approved aftermarket replacement and it is the same tire as the OE tire. I would say at a high level speaking, the requirements that certain OEMs have for, say, a direct OE on the vehicle tire versus a direct replacement can be slightly different. But this is generally just in terms of overall uniformity, and the range is quite small. So what it means is that they usually request to us the absolute best tires you make in terms of the total uniformity. We want those on the cars. Because at the end of the day, it's a sales thing. They want the absolute best so that the OE can sell the car.
Right.
And then anything else, which still meets all of their requirements, all of their standards, all of the technical requirements, is then used as a direct aftermarket replacement. The moment that you then go away from an OE mark tire, to a certain extent, then all bets are off. Because at that point, there's no control directly from the OE. They have no input. And Pirelli, like most top premium tire manufacturers, we hold ourselves still to a very high level of standard, but it's not done together with the OE. So at that point, you're buying tires. You could have a BMW and you buy Porsche tires, which generally is going to be fine. But at the same time, you then have a BMW vehicle and you're then taking limits or requirements that have been done by Porsche. If you have a Ford, if you have any number of different vehicles, you're starting to mix and match, which can give mixed results. So if you really want to be certain that you have the same tire, you stick with the marked tire from your from the OE, and that gives you the confidence that it has been approved both in the first cycle and the second, third, and fourth by the OE themselves.
Yeah,
So the tire manufacturer knows more.
I see what you're doing here. I see what you're doing
Because
here.
I was thinking about the recent F1 race.
I knew it. I
where,
knew it.
You know, Ferrari was going to be. We all thought they were going to win,
Oh, boy.
and instead they decided a strategy that Pirelli did not recommend, which medium hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was. They said that Pirelli always releases their strategies after the race to the teams, and
Well, for those that aren't well versed in F1, why don't you rewind a little bit here and share with them what you're talking about?
it was just a cluster.
Okay, so before every race, Pirelli gives all the teams a recommendation of what compounds to run.
You see this at pro races. You see it at IMSA, Formula One. You know, you see the tire manufacturers are guys, engineers. They're not salesmen. They're engineers walking around, and they're working with the teams to get the best possible performance out of the tires. And they're making recommendations to the teams about how long the tires should go before they bring them in. Formula One, this is even more magnified, and
optimum temperature ranges, which I think was the issue at the last Hungarian Grand
as
Prix.
Anthony said, who's our member services rep, he said, if here I am sitting at home and I can tell the strategy wasn't going to work, what was Ferrari thinking?
But someone there thought that they would either be a hero or a zero. And they
Fortunately, they didn't blame, the drivers didn't blame Pirelli.
yeah.
Which is amazing, because usually when I sit at home and there's any whiff of trouble for any team, I
It was
turn
a
to
tire.
my wife
It was
and
a
I
tire.
say, they're going to blame us. Just
Yeah.
watch. It's here. It's going to come.
Yeah.
All of the, there's a freak storm that comes in, blame the tires. This is, I feel like, the race.
Was it
car
Verstappen
excuse.
last year that was kicking the tire? He was so
Yeah.
mad.
Yeah, somebody. Yeah. Well, I think so. There's a finite amount of tires that each team or each car has at these races, correct? So, I read something, and I pay attention to F1, but I don't have the channel to watch the races, so I get the highlights and all that. And I read, and I think I read somewhere that the intermediate tires that I think Ferrari wanted to run, they had already used most of those earlier in the weekend. So it was either put a new set of hards on or a used set of mediums.
Yeah, it's
Something like
possible.
that.
And every team has a very fixed allocation
Yeah.
of tires for the weekend, and then they can use them through practice, through qualifying, through the race. And it is up to them to manage their total allocation, trying to predict, well, what might the weather be like tomorrow? What are the different, what will the temperature be? What will we need for the race? What will we need for qualifying, et cetera, et cetera. So that's become a big part of the strategy of Formula One. And then, of course, as you said, we make certain recommendations for what we feel like is the fastest way to complete the race, but that's not dependent on whether the teams have the tires or not. It's up to them to take care of their tires, and if they don't, that's on them. We're operating in a theoretical world, and then they have to operate in the, let's say, what do we actually have world.
Yeah.
So one of the things when we were together in Florida for the F1 race is just the magnitude and the presence of Pirelli at this race to bring all the tires. We ship things for our events at PCA, and it is such a headache. What's it like for you, where this multi-billion-dollar event is dependent on these little round things that you send, and what's that like?
Yeah, so it is a massive coordination and logistical effort, I will say, and especially at the start of the season, or once the tire specs are fixed. At the moment, there are 5 different overall tire specs, and then 3 are chosen for any given race. So at that point, the engineering side of things is mostly done, I would say, and then it becomes the operation side of things. And so we're bringing close to 2,000 tires for every single race, and as you can see, based on the schedule, it's on every single corner of the globe, and often they're bouncing one continent next weekend, another continent next weekend, another continent, and of course we're following along as well. So Pirelli brings a couple of hundred people to every single race. As you mentioned, every single team has their own dedicated Pirelli engineer, and then there's support staff beyond that, and then we're mounting and dismounting all of the tires at the race as well. So it's never shown on TV because it's not the most glamorous part, but there is always big trailers in the background where we're mounting and dismounting all those tires on the spot. We don't ship them already mounted to the wheels or anything like that. So that's all done on site, but as you said, it becomes this insane just-in-time exercise that together with our logistics partners, we have to get those tires to every location exactly when they need to be. If they're one day late, the race doesn't happen. And that's the kind of pressure that we're working under. And in the past couple of years, as we all know, shipping things and getting goods moved around the earth has become more and more difficult, and it's really made our lives more difficult too. One of the things that we've been able to do, which has helped a lot working together with Formula One, is we've been able to lock in the tire choices a bit farther ahead of time for each of the races, which allows us to start shipping earlier. So it used to be, there was only a couple of weeks notice at times, and then we'd have to air freight tires and etc. Now we're looking a few months out, so we can decide the tires for September, October now, so then we can stick them on the boat. We can have that lead time, which is something we didn't have in the past, because otherwise, and I won't go into details here, but there have been some very close calls, very strange corners of the globe, very seemingly pedantic things that suddenly the world almost stopped, because, as you said, if the tires don't get there, the race doesn't happen. Yeah. And there's no room for error. That schedule is so tight now. Every week they're in a different continent practically. That we saw this in Belgium last year, where it was so rainy and they couldn't run the race on the Sunday, and people were like, well, why don't they just run it on the Monday? No, because Sunday night all that stuff's got to start leaving, and if it doesn't, then it becomes late to the next one. Same thing, all our people. Literally hundreds of Pirelli people travel to each event, and if they can't get a head start or get started at the right time to get to the next event, the whole thing breaks down.
Yeah, I mean, that's, being together with you down in Miami, that's probably I watched the racing and all, and that was amazing, but just looking around and seeing everything that was built for that one event, and knowing that, Monday it's going to go away and be shipped somewhere else, and they start back up the following week. Like, it's an incredible machine.
Yeah, and I would say, and I would encourage anybody who hasn't been to a race. I've been to a few recently, and as you say, when you go to the track itself, it's very hard to actually follow the race itself. It doesn't compare to watching on TV, where you can actually see what's going on. But just to be there and understand the whole sort of circus of it and the show, and looking at the fact, as you said, that almost everything is temporary. Everything packs up and moves, and just how smoothly it runs is really amazing. There's so many moving parts, thousands of staff, jumbo jets worth of stuff, and everything just goes like clockwork for the most part.
And what I learned was there's a good number of people that travel along with the show. I don't want to say it's like a circus,
that's what they call it.
But it is. I mean, I'm like, what like gummies are these people eating? Because they're all so happy and so welcoming, and so and they're like, yeah, this is what we do, and we're there at all the races. I'm like, so you travel? Yep. I've given up the regular day job to follow this, and I do the same thing at each event, and they love it. They love traveling the world. They love being part of F1, and it's an amazing experience.
Like what did you think of the race on Sunday?
The race on this Sunday, this past Sunday?
Yeah.
I didn't watch it.
Oh, so it's only VIP for you or nothing at all.
What was I doing Sunday?
So, I don't know if he told you, but when he got the invite to go to Miami,
He's the reason why I got to go to Miami.
I had to tell him. He's like, I'm not sure I'm going to go or not. I'm like, are you nuts? I'm like,
Not that I wasn't sure that I
you're
was.
going to get a VIP to F1?
I didn't feel worthy. It's like.
I told him, I said, you have to like binge watch Drive to Survive.
And I did. Boy, did
Somebody
I do my
stopped
homework.
at like the third season. So we're talking about something. He goes, wait a minute, I thought he was driving for this team. I'm like, you are like 2 seasons behind.
I didn't realize it was the third season. I thought I finished it. I was like, I finished my homework. This kind of reminds me of high school. Or teacher, I read everything. Oh, there was another chapter. But yeah, it was amazing. So I also wanted to kind of delve a little bit. You were talking about logistics of getting the F1 tires and such like that. But thought I'd give you a chance to talk about, from the retail side for Pirelli customers and tires in general with, supply chain issues. Is it true that just the amount of tires available for consumers to buy down because of supply chain issues?
Yeah, it's certainly been a challenge, and we had this really crazy ebb and flow as we all know from COVID and 2 years ago that really at that point the whole market shut down and we had tires coming out of our ears. There were, because nobody was buying, nobody was going anywhere. There were tires absolutely everywhere, and now it's taken a couple of years, and of course us, like everybody, are dealing every day with supply chain issues. And so both for me on the original equipment side, working with the car manufacturers and also then working in retail afterwards, the challenges are a little bit different. From an OE standpoint, similarly to F1, we're supplying every day thousands and thousands of tires to car manufacturers here in North America. And these guys have, for the past many decades, run pretty much a just-in-time operation. So they have massive factories in Michigan or in Georgia or in Alabama or wherever, and they're expecting to get their tires within hours of when it's supposed to be there. And if they don't, they have to stop the factory. And we are one of those parts, like most parts, that you can't really build a car with most of the parts.
Right.
There are a few things you can fix afterwards, and it's been amazing to see when the lack of semiconductors and how they've adapted to that kind of thing of building cars, putting them in a parking lot, and then updating them afterwards once they get the parts. Tires is not so easy, because if you don't have anything to stick on the vehicle, you can't roll it down the line, and that becomes a problem. So for us, it's been we've really had to focus on making sure that we can ensure supply to these guys, and then of course also supplying the retail thing afterwards. The issue with that, of course, is that us, like everybody, are constrained overall by the total amount that we can do, and sometimes we have to pick and choose between different customers or different markets based on where the need is the most urgent at that moment. But for us, like, we produce tires in North America, both in the US and in Mexico. We produce them in Brazil, we produce them in Europe, all of which are sold here in the US. And so, like, the challenges we face now, for example, international freight or shipping containers. Mm-hmm. One of the big issues we have now, which seems like a silly issue, is that there are a ton of shipping containers with our tires sitting offshore on the ports waiting to be unloaded. The ports are so congested that the tires are there. They're half a mile out from shore, and then we have customers who need them, but there's a limited capacity to unload the containers.
Because there's not enough people to unload them?
There's not enough capacity in the ports to get the tires off. So we are constantly then trying to manage together with the ports, which ones do we pull? How do we get more capacity to do so? That goes the same thing for raw materials. We get raw materials from Asia, for example, and those boats are also coming into the same ports that we need to feed our factories here. So how do we decide? Do we get the raw material to keep our factory running? Do we get the tires to keep our customers happy? There's no great answer, if those are the decisions that we're having to make. We've just really seen it's amazing that the supply chain for the automotive industry as a whole is one of the most complex in any industry. And if you look at any car, any Porsche, for example, any other modern car, and you look at where the parts are coming from, it is amazing to think how many stops it's taken. Sure. And it's amazing to think that it ran so smoothly for so long. And now we realize just how fragile that is, because this small disruption, we still haven't been able to recover as
well.
an
We've
economy.
worked for decades to get, just in time and this process to be so precise, so that it runs efficiently, minimal costs. But then if there's a disruption, man, it falls also very quickly.
But
right?
the trucking industry has been saying for over a decade that there's going to be a big shortage of drivers.
Yeah.
That drivers are going to be retiring, and there isn't enough
No
of
backfill.
the younger ones coming in,
Right.
and the need for, especially with the advent of Amazon and other online retailers, that
Higher demand and no
everybody's
drivers.
going to make. But yeah, I guess we ignored it. Now we're
Paying for it.
realizing that we do need more of everything.
But even in automotive, there's been this big push to get rid of warehousing in general. And so a lot of suppliers and a lot of car manufacturers have essentially, as you said, moved everything to just in time, so they don't really have a warehouse. Now, suddenly in this moment, seems like a pretty good idea to have a warehouse just in
Right,
case,
right.
because who knows when the locusts are going to come or whatever plague is going to come next. But now nobody has it anymore because they
Right.
sold off all their real estate, so everybody wants the parts, but they have nowhere to put them.
Oh, what a pickle.
Yeah.
So is it little subject change? Is North America still, or are they the only purchasers of all-season tires compared to the rest of the world?
So they're not the only purchaser, but by far the biggest one. Yeah, there's some popularity in Asia and in China and in certain fitments and certain vehicles. In Europe, there's still not a lot of traction with all season. I would say in South America also not the same as here. So it is clearly, and when we develop all season products as Pirelli globally, it's for the North American market. And sometimes we can sell those tires elsewhere, but the priority is always the North American market because it's still still how this market works. And we would love to sell somebody summer and winter tires. This is what we do in Europe, and our business is based around this. But in North America, we don't have the ability, and neither does any other tire manufacturer, to move the perception so dramatically. People here want to have one set of tires for the most part all year round. And they want them to last a long time. This is the other big difference, is that when we develop tires for North America, the mileage or the wear rate has to be much higher than anywhere else. The distances are so far. People love to drive long distances. And it's relatively cheap compared to, say, the price of gas in Europe or other places like that. So the mileage requirement here for our tires and our products is much higher than any of the other markets as well.
It's interesting when I tell people about winter tires, and in Maryland, we're not. There may be a winter we don't have any snow at all. We may have heavy snow on winter, but when I mention winter tires, people think snow tires, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I don't drive in the snow." And I try to explain to them, this is people with Porsches, and I say it's not snow tires, it's tires that are going to perform better in cold temperatures than your summer. You don't want to bring your summer tires out in 30-degree weather or 20-degree weather, but these winter tires are going to perform really well and give you confidence. And I try to explain to them in Europe, this is how they do it. It's two sets of
You don't
tires.
even have to go that far. Just go up north. People in Canada get it. They have their summer tires and their
It's a
winter
law
tires.
in a lot of those other countries, though,
Yeah.
right? It's by law you have to change to winter tires
Yeah.
during the winter. And,
But they don't even have all. I mean, all season's not something they.
yeah, well, and all season wouldn't be allowed in Germany, I don't
No.
think, in the
Well,
winter,
yeah.
unless it has that little snowflake
Right.
thing, right?
It has to have the Three Peak Mountain snowflake.
Yep. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not considered officially a winter tire, and it doesn't meet the regulations. And as you said, places like in Canada, like in Quebec, they have to change by law to winter tires. And so at that point, if you're going to run a set of full winters, you might as well have summers because,
Yep.
why would you have all season? You might as well take advantage of a summer tire if you have to switch to a winter tire.
I think all season tires are like a hybrid bicycle. It doesn't do anything well. You don't get the full on sport, and you don't get the the bad weather capability.
I can see it putting it on a minivan, but you don't have to be in a environment that has a lot of snow. But if it gets cold, and you want to drive your Porsche or any performance car year round, then it's worth having winter and summer because you're going to get maximum performance. Because you hear these people going, "Why I can't drive my car to an event in December or January because it's summer tires.
Yeah.
So something I do on my Golf and my Camry, which you probably don't know about my Camry, but it's a horrible, crappy car, but I love it.
Tires are worth more.
Nor
than
should
car.
you really know about this car.
Yeah,
but
right.
He's going to share anyway.
But basically, so I run all weather tires on those, so I don't have to change the tire year round, and I don't care about performance all that much. Does Pirelli have an all weather tire, or plan to make an all weather
for
tire?
$69 or less?
Yeah,
It still has the mountain peaks with the snowflake, but it obviously it's more like an all season.
asking for a friend.
Yeah, exactly, right.
yeah, we're actually launching a new all-weather tire this year.
Oh, nice.
Exactly as you're describing. So, an all-season tire, in a lot of ways, I would refer to as a 3-season tire. And it depends where you live, of course, but in Michigan, it is definitely a 3-season tire. So we're launching, it's going to be called Weather Active, and we're launching a product that's basically, as you said, it's an all-season tire, but with more advanced winter performance. It's still not, if you live in Michigan, I would say no, you need a full-blown winter tire, but it's you can drive through some snow without, you can get home. It's kind of get home snow level, I would say. And it has the 3-peak mountain snowflake rating. So this is what all season, in my opinion, should really mean. All season has taken this meaning of really just being 3-season, and now we have the 4-season tire that I'm describing. But that's something that I don't think it would be for $69 per tire, unfortunately.
Yeah.
As the sales guy here, I'm going to tell you that I don't know that we can make that work. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that we've seen some popularity, and that market has grown a little bit. It's still very regionalized. It's still really, in the northern part of the country, and it's still very seasonal. The people who buy those tires are buying them in the fall, like they would a winter tire, but then they're not changing it through the summer.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, in those kind of situations, it can work for sure.
Yeah, I've appreciated that. It's because it doesn't snow all that much here, and it's gotten me home when it has snowed. But I'm a big fan of those tires.
So he has all-weather tires, but isn't it broken? The car doesn't run right now.
So it's the slave cylinder, actually. So I wish I had a picture that I had given Robert, but man, that thing is so rusty. I can't believe.
He drove it down to Amelia Island. And
I'm surprised it didn't break on the way to Amelia Island.
If it made it, it made it.
We had some of the designers and key people from Porsche there, and they were very fascinated by this Camry, especially the rust hole in the hood. And evidently, they were really impressed how lax the government regulations and inspections are of the cars on the road today.
No. My Camry is historic.
Oh, there you go.
They want to know what historic place meant in Maryland. And I'm like, that means that no one has to look at your car. In any state, these cars are whatever condition. As long as they have this plate, they get the pass.
Just because they're old enough.
Yeah, and I don't drive it everywhere. It's a special car. So.
Special
I
occasion.
can tell.
So speaking of special cars, let's see if I can transition this into Porsche news. There was a link that you shared with us about a Panamera, and you got kind of torqued up about it.
Oh, I just didn't understand it. There we go. It's a spy shot of the upcoming Panamera with center lock wheels.
Oh, now I know why you're torqued up.
I'm not a fan of center lock wheels.
For a street car.
For a street car. Yeah, they had their purpose in racing, of course.
Yeah.
But
And I'm guessing you're not a fan of them just because you have to buy like a $500 torque wrench.
they're not
5 foot
practical.
long wrench.
I mean, I don't even know if the new Panamera has a spare tire to even to worry about, but most shops, I bet you aren't equipped to take off a Porsche center lock wheel.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I personally would prefer 5 lug nuts and keep it simple. Looks cool.
I'm hoping, I think Damon or somebody brought this up, that they may be testing something out and it's done with the center lock, but they're not going to come out with the center lock.
Yeah, maybe it's a high performance version of the Panamera, but I don't see any. I mean, I guess Turbo S Panamera doesn't have spoilers already, right? So maybe it's the Turbo S hybrid.
But it has a spoiler that pops up on the rear.
Yeah. Or actually, Turbo GT Cayenne had center locks. I wonder if they're doing.
Did it really?
Panamera, I'm pretty sure, didn't it? Let's look at these. Gosh, we should know this after.
got to edit this part out so we know what we're
right?
talking about.
It didn't, I would have noticed if it had center locks.
I don't think it did.
No, it didn't.
I was
I'm
gonna
kidding.
say.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't know. It's probably the kind of thing that like that would for sure be a very top end Panamera.
Yeah.
And the guy who buys that is going to be taking it to.
He's not torquing his
He's
wheels.
just selling.
Right,
If
yeah,
he gets
yeah,
a flat tire, he's selling the car.
Right. Now, where center locks do apply is this amazing 911 GT3R.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
That is a gorgeous car. Okay, so slap me.
So that's not going to, our resident racing expert, Jim Hemmig, told me that is not racing at Le Mans this coming year.
It's not?
The RSR is going to race. This is going to race in 2024. It will be at Daytona, though, and we'll do the IMSA series.
Yeah.
So this is the new GT3R, obviously. It's replacing the current GT3R that's racing at IMSA. But it won't be at Le Mans.
And where is the placement of the engine in that car?
In the rear, behind the axle.
Behind the axle. Yeah, it looks menacing.
I believe the RSR that's running is the mid-engine one.
Yeah, the way Porsche says it, it's not really meant to be a lot faster, because the balance of performance will always cancel it out. But they focused on making it a lot easier to drive for both the pro racers and then, a lot of the gentlemen or pro-am racers that field these teams. So,
I know they build things for a purpose, but how it looks is so menacing.
Yeah.
That thing is.
and Grant
gorgeous.
Larson was behind that.
Oh, really?
Again, yeah.
I wonder if they're releasing this first, so when they come out with the RS, they're going to say, well, it's not as big as an R-Wing.
Right. All right. How about recent videos we've released?
Yeah, so we've released our latest podcast, episode 21, which by the time you hear this, hopefully you've watched it or listened to it. We also
People responded in the comments to their...
Yeah. So when we were asking them questions
Yes.
about how they got started in their Porsche life, that was pretty cool that everyone shared not everyone, but a lot of people shared their stories. So yeah, keep sharing your stories.
Yeah, we love comments. Love stories. We also released a 1 mile review on the 2008 Porsche Boxster RS60 Spider, which is not as famous as the later Boxster Spider, the one with the top that's all, very lightweight and kind of finicky. But it is the original Boxster Spider, and it does have suspension updates, the most horsepower in a Boxster up to that point. I think it was like 6 or 7 more than a Boxster S.
I didn't
303 horsepower.
Yeah, I didn't realize that it tipped over 300.
Yeah. It's supposedly handles better. You'd probably have to drive them back to back to really tell. But the original Boxster Spider. Manny, what do you think about that car? Maybe a quick overview.
I love the... if you look at the instrument pods, they don't have the cover over top of it.
Yeah.
They're exposed, and that's an easy way to spot an RS60 along with the wheels that are unique to that model.
And that car is a tip car, not a PDK
This
car.
was a tip, yeah. It came out, it was optional either way. And, it doesn't, I don't think I give it a high score for a car show because it looks like a regular Boxster.
Yep.
It's not anything.
I think you hurt some folks' feelings.
Well, it does. Although when I first met Dwayne, who owns a car, he was impressed that I knew what it was.
Yeah.
Because he said, most people don't realize it's a RS60. And
I do notice those wheels are very similar to the 50th Club Coupe.
They're the same design.
Same design, right?
So, but I don't think they came out on the mid-engine cars until the RS60 Spider, and then they offered it through Tech Equipment. Like I have a set of those wheels for my Cayman as well.
Yeah.
it's for people who like to clean wheels.
I was about to say, it's a good-looking wheel, but cleaning those reminds me of my childhood cleaning.
You know how I took
spoke
care of
after
that?
spoke. You don't clean them.
I
black.
painted them bronze.
Oh,
That
and you don't
can't see the brick does.
and you don't clean
I'm
them.
sure they're going to hire you at Porsche Exclusive.
Is that at the same top as the normal one, though?
Same
Yes,
top,
it does.
same top.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Spider you're thinking about is the 987 Boxster Spider with the, as I told the designer, I called it a convoluted top. And he laughed. He said, I've never heard anyone describe it as convoluted.
But does it keep the rain out?
I think for the most part,
So you know what's interesting about the
For the
9...
most
For the
part?
most part.
I don't know if that's good
I was about to
enough.
say it's like a Jeep bikini top.
So
Okay,
here's what's
so
interesting with
questionable.
the 987 Boxster Spider top. When I was on a committee that was forming the rules for driver's ed, and when the Spider came out, we immediately got emails asking the fact that in the manual it says do not go over 100 miles an hour with the top on. And then PCA drivers then, you had to keep your top on. Otherwise, you had to have a system with wrist restraints so your arms didn't flail out the window. And so we were like, what should we... well, you put me in the back of a Pinto with microphones, and I'm going to hit stuff.
For those of you that can't see, I'm trying to get him not to hit the microphone. Anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
This little closet that we're working in. So anyways, so we contact Porsche and we say, hey, listen, your owner's manual says don't go over 100 miles an hour. But these cars are going to be on the racetrack and they're going to hit over 100. We can't tell the people, shut it off at 100. And we said, what happens at 101 miles an hour? And they couldn't find an answer.
They didn't want to give you an official answer.
They said, we really don't, no one knows. And I think we've talked to people who've had it over 100 miles an hour, but I think the top was so, not flimsy, but in talking with the people from Porsche this year, they told us that when they did the top, they didn't think it was going to get approved. And so they had it in the studio, and the person from above who has to approve this came into the room, looked around it, asked the designer, I think it was Grant Larson, to show how you take it off, and he took it halfway off, and the guy nodded and walked around and left. And they said, when do we hear it? And his assistant says, no, he likes it. And he goes, well, he didn't say anything. He goes, no, that means he likes it.
That means he likes it.
And so it got passed, which they were really surprised because they never thought in a million years that this top would get approved. And it got approved, and so we don't. I would love to hear I would love to hear what's as fast as anyone's ever gone on the track with the Spider top up.
I love that Spider top just because I used to have a Jeep, and during the summers I would just run with a bikini top, so I didn't mind getting a little wet if it rained. But that top is so cool that you can run it without the back part. It's like a two-piece top, so you can run where you have shade, but you still have open air. It's cool.
So when you say driving Jeep in bikini top,
Yeah.
I'm imagining you wearing a bikini top, and I don't want to imagine that. But
I apologize to the listeners for that image in your head. It's basically a
And
cloth top.
Robert, who does our control right now, is trying to Google a picture of Boo in a
Boo in
bikini top.
bikini. Don't do that, Robert. Don't do that. All right, folks.
So on to the videos. Actually, it's probably worth mentioning this as well. We did release a short. So if you have a late model Porsche that has an electronic frunk release or trunk release for the front trunk, this video will show you how to get to your dead battery. If your battery dies, you need to open things up and replace it. Head over to our channel, and it's how to open your Porsche's frunk with a battery extender.
Yeah, and this is something good to know now when you don't need it.
Yes, because this has happened to me with my 911.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
And I was pretty frantic because
Yeah.
it is
Everything's
it takes
dead,
a while to
and
figure-
you can't open.
Yeah.
You can't open the front.
Yep.
So
It's
that's
a short video. It's, I think, less than 30 seconds. So
it's worthwhile watching and just
yeah.
having that nugget of information.
And
in the
there's little
background.
lithium battery not charger, but jump starter. Is worth every penny, and you can get them for like under $50. They're so portable, and if I go on a trip or something, I always bring one with me as an emergency because they also have a USB charging. They have a light.
Yeah.
They even have a 110 outlet you can plug.
Yeah.
So it does a lot
Totally
in a
worth
little
it.
space. Yeah. So it's we had some comments, people asking about what was that thing we were using.
Yeah.
To give it, it's a lot easier than taking hotshot cables, jump start cables, and pulling a car next to it.
I think in our battery, we did a battery video on YouTube, and we covered part of it about those boxes, and they're also, like everything, they're not all created equal. So make sure you do your research and get a good one, and don't skip out and get a 1999 one, because when you really need it, you want it to work, right? And you don't want it to, fizzle out in your glove box.
I think there's a tech tips that you wrote about those. I think
back
a year
in,
or so ago.
last parade, I had one with me, and a guy was trying to jump start his GT3, and from the front of his tow vehicle, and it wasn't reaching the cables. And so I walked over. I said, "Let me show you something," and I plugged it in, and he was like, "Wow!" He goes, "You got to recharge it every time." I'm like, "I could do about probably 15 jump starts." And the battery's only halfway worn.
Yeah, my experience was, so I keep my car on a battery tender. And so I went out to Summit Point and it had a full charge when I left, but then sitting at the autocross and staging everything, turning my car on and off, the battery was bad and it died in staging. I'm like, uh-oh, what do I do? And someone said, oh, I can jump. And I'm thinking he's going to bring his car with jumper cables like the treasure. He comes over with like a little notebook, I mean, it looked like an iPad. And he's like, he just connected it, and my car started. I'm like, I need to get one of those. So yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, once you have it, you.
All right,
how
and
long
I
it
told
was
you,
without
Robin, an hour would go by super quick. I'm just gonna say thanks for listening, everyone. Please be sure to subscribe, leave a comment. We read them, we appreciate them. If you aren't currently a PCA member and you own a Porsche, what are you waiting for? Have your VIN handy and go to PCA.org and sign up. If you're looking for a Porsche, we have a test drive program where we can help you find the Porsche of your dreams. Be sure to follow us on the podcast Instagram page, Porsche Club Insider, all one word. If you have anything that you want to share with us, you can email us at podcast@pca.org, or again, comment on YouTube, comment on the Apple Podcast platform. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, stay safe, and we'll catch you down the road.